Those are live scenes from the US Congress. That's underway at the moment. Let's get a view on this. Professor Robert Shearer is a Professor Emeritus of Politics at the University of Cape Town. He joins us now. Professor, good evening to you. I mean, in a way, it's quite incredible what's happened in the United States. Even though Trump had lost the election just a couple of weeks ago, 8 days ago, no one could have predicted what's happened since then. The Democrats have won control of the Senate, and now it looks like Trump could be impeached for a second time.
Yes, these are certainly strange days, but if you go back a little bit, I know we're always wise after the event, but there has been a steady escalation in Trump's attack on the US system. And I think after the election, when he was clearly a lame duck, his political clout started weakening and his rhetoric escalated, with the result that I think he became a desperate man. And in his desperation, he has led an insurrection. And by so doing, he has lost massive support from the American people, more importantly, from the political elite. So what he really had that let him be so powerful was the threat of his supporters on Twitter. Now the threat is largely dissipated, and I think we can really say that old platitude, the chickens have come back to roost.
I mean, in a way, it's obvious. If you lose an election, no one cares about you. I mean, that's what's happened here, isn't it? He lost an election. He's gone from being, the winner to, I hate to say, a loser.
Well, the extraordinary thing is that even when he lost the election, more than half the Republicans in the Congress supported his outrageous claim, and we know perhaps two-thirds of the American people believed it was rigged. And of course, this is the essential tragedy. If you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. And to my mind, I know certainly that Trump is guilty of rejecting an election, acting in a autocratic, anti-democratic way. But the real enablers are the members of Congress, the senators who played along. And I think their attitude was, the man has lost the election, let's just humor him for a few more weeks, then he'll go, and then we can really pick up the pieces. I think they failed to really understand that when you arouse people, you make them outraged, you tell them that they have lost an election, they are very likely to take action. And the Americans are known as can-do people. We know that they have no gun control, that you can buy machine guns and AK-47s. So Trump essentially lit the flame that is now burning, but he did so because he was enabled by the Republican Party, by Fox News, by, in fact, YouTube and all of the others.
In a way, we have what's happening in the Democratic-controlled Congress right now. Now, the Senate, things are slightly different. If I understand the American system correctly, and gosh, sometimes it's a strange system to try and understand, but you'd actually need quite a big majority, I think it's 2/3 in the Senate, to impeach. That would mean that a large number of Republican senators would have to vote against the person they used to support. Do you think that's going to happen?
No, I think, perhaps for the listener, the House of Representatives will undoubtedly impeach the president. But an impeachment is really, if you will, an indictment. It is essentially laying a charge. The real action takes place in the Senate, where there is a trial. And as you correctly point out, the Senate has to vote by 2/3 majority of the full membership. Now, to do that, it will require 17 senators switching to the Democratic side on this issue. 17. At the moment, it seems there are perhaps 2 or 3, so I think it's highly unlikely. So in a sense, one needs to ask the question, if the president has only a week left in office, and if he can't be convicted by the Senate in the limited time that's available, what is the object of this very traumatic exercise?
There's a bigger question in a way, and I want to talk a little bit about the former Senate Majority Leader, the person who led the Republicans in the Senate for a long time, Mitch McConnell. He's from Kentucky. He is a very experienced politician. Now, let me just say straight out, I can't stand the man's politics. But in a way, through all of this time, he seems to have got what he wanted. He managed to change in fact, the very nature of the US Supreme Court, various policies through on the back of the Trump sort of wave in American politics. And now he's in a position, even symbolically, where he could vote against Trump in the Senate and claim that he's reclaiming the Republican Party from Trump and get the party back to where it used to be. He could emerge from this as one of history's great winners, even if I think many South Africans would find his politics quite abhorrent.
Yes, look, there's no doubt that Mitch McConnell is one of the most effective political players in the US. He has played Trump brilliantly. Trump has been the useful idiot, and McConnell has played him. He's got what he wanted. He's got his 3 Supreme Court justices. He has had dozens of federal judges appointed. He has got his tax cuts. He's really been remarkably shrewd, and it now looks as if he is going to find Trump disposable, dispensable, and in fact cut his throat. Of course, the big problem McConnell has is that he's close to 80. So his days as an activist leader are coming to an end. But certainly he will be able to say, I played this idiot very effectively. I got my policy agenda happily secured. And then essentially I stabbed him in the back. And this, of course, is the optimistic scenario, and got Trump out of the way. And the hope is that the Republican Party can cease to be the party of personalities. And this is the revolution Trump brought about. It didn't become the Republican Party, it became the Trump Party, and it bore no relationship to the conservative ideology of Republicans. So if he can carry it out, it'll be remarkable. He will have used Trump, discarded Trump, and brought back the old Republican Party.
So it really shows you how rough politics can be, doesn't it? The US President-elect Joe Biden, I mean, quite sort of silent during this time. I mean, of course, he slammed the protests last week, the violence that we saw. I haven't seen him say too much, maybe I missed it, but I haven't seen him say too much about impeaching Trump. Is his role to sort of keep calm and look presidential?
I think the Biden approach really has been he doesn't want to get into the gutter with Trump. The lesson I think that we've learnt is when you get into the gutter with Trump, you lose. Think of Rubio, think of Cruz. When they started trying to play the Trump game, talking dirty, attacking him personally, they in fact lost. Nobody can wallow in the mud as well as Trump. So I think what Biden's trying to do is to be the statesman, to ignore all of this noise, and to work on putting together his cabinet. I think one could certainly criticize him that perhaps he should have been a little more active, but in condemning Trump. But one can understand that he really wants Trump to go away. He wants to get his agenda going. He himself is pretty close to 80, so he doesn't have a lot of time. And obviously he wants to get his cabinet in place and his policies adopted.
At the same time, he also has quite a complex coalition of forces to manage. I mean, if you look at the people who supported Biden, in a way, he was the sort of dead center, perhaps of American politics, even more than Democratic politics in some ways. His coalition, the way that he's got to manage things when Trump is gone. Trump's been the big, if Trump was a useful idiot for Mitch McConnell, Trump was a great unifying figure for the Democrats. Without Trump, with Trump, seemingly out of the picture completely, Biden's job could actually suddenly become a lot more difficult than it is as I speak to you now.
I think in many ways it wouldn't be an overstatement to say Biden is facing an impossible challenge. First of all, pretty well 40% of the American people believe he stole the election. So when you start off with this huge number of people who oppose you, you really have a legitimacy problem. Secondly, he in fact doesn't control the Senate. It's 50-50. It's the casting votes of Kamala Harris. So he really can't afford to lose any votes on any issue. And of course, as we know, all political parties, our ANC is an example, are divided between left, right, center, different ambitions. So he is going to have to somehow balance all of these different factions. And the critical problem that he faces, And one of the weaknesses of the American system is that the House of Representatives dissolves and runs for re-election every 2 years. So in 2 years' time, the entire House of Representatives will be replaced in an election, and usually the party in power loses seats. So people have high expectations of Biden, and if he can't deliver, if he has problems within his party, Sanders and some of the others, then in fact the party, the Democratic Party, will lose support and lose the House. So it's a very difficult position with Bernie and Elizabeth Warren on the left, and of course on the right, Senator from West Virginia, pretty conservative. They're still conservative Democrats. It's going to be a very tough balancing act. And as I think you correctly point out, the glue which cemented his victory was Donald Trump. With Donald Trump out of the picture, the boogeyman to unite the Democrats will disappear, and we might see the battle for succession. And remember that Kamala Harris doesn't really have a strong support base in the party, and given the age of Biden, there will be a lot of contenders looking for the next election, 4 years' time, to be the Democratic candidate for president.
Professor Robert Shearer, I really appreciate your time. Thank you. Politics Professor Emeritus Robert Shearer from the University of Cape Town.